Most people think power comes from being louder, more aggressive, or more impressive. They're watching the wrong game entirely. The people who actually control outcomes rarely raise their voice. You won't see them in the center of the room demanding attention. Instead, they're often quiet, observing, calculating. They've cracked a code about human psychology that the average person will never understand. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. Your entire life, you've been taught that directness works. Ask for what you want. Be honest. Show your cards. Tell people how you feel. Communicate clearly. It sounds reasonable. It sounds mature. It sounds right. And it's destroyed you. You're overlooked because you're readable. Everyone can predict you. You're taken for granted because you're always available. You're disrespected because you're transparent. You have no mystery. You have no edge. Meanwhile, the people running rooms, closing deals, commanding loyalty, and getting what they want without asking for it, they operate on a completely different set of rules. Not because they're born special, not because they have some genetic advantage, but because they understand how human psychology actually works, not how we pretend it works in self-help books and motivational podcasts. Here's the brutal truth that nobody wants to admit. The human mind doesn't run on logic. It never has. It runs on resistance. We're wired to fight against pressure. We're wired to want what we can't have. We're wired to prove ourselves when our competence is questioned. We're wired to protect our sense of autonomy, even when that autonomy is an illusion. The moment you understand this, really understand it, you stop chasing outcomes and you start designing them. What follows are 13 principles that control perception, trigger decisions, and shift the power dynamic entirely in your favor. But there's a warning embedded in this knowledge. A serious warning. These aren't tricks to use on people like you're running some kind of manipulation game. They're reflections of how you need to think, how you need to operate internally. Master them in your own mind, and you'll naturally apply them externally without effort. Try to weaponize them while you're desperate, while you're needy, while you actually need the outcome, and they will backfire. They will expose you. The other person will feel the desperation underneath, and your entire strategy collapses. The foundation of all power is this. You must believe that you don't need the outcome. And that belief only comes from having built something real in your life. We'll get there. But first, let's understand the 13 rules that the powerful use without thinking. Law 1. The illusion of choices. A child doesn't want to go to bed. It's playtime. It's fun. Bedtime is the enemy. So what does the weak parent do? They command, go to bed now. The child resists. He screams. He fights. He asserts his dominance. He's protecting his autonomy. He's saying, I'm not your puppet. And the entire situation escalates into a war. Now watch what the strategic parent does. They don't command. They ask, do you want to go to bed now or in 10 minutes? Suddenly, everything changes. The child has made a choice. He feels in control. He picked his own path. He decided when he's going to sleep. He feels like the captain of his own destiny. The reality, both options lead to sleep. Both options get the child to bed. You designed the entire landscape. He just walks through the door you preferred, and he feels like you won. Adults are identical to this child. They're just taller and they have better vocabularies. They just have stronger defenses. But the operating system is the same. People don't hate your idea. They hate that it wasn't their idea. They don't resist your solution. They resist your authority. The ego is starving for autonomy. It's desperately clinging to the illusion that it's in control. Feed that hunger, and it'll do exactly what you wanted while believing it was their call. In business negotiation, never say the deal is final. Never say this is the price. Take it or leave it. Instead, you frame it like this. We can lock this price in today, and you're protected for the next 2 years no matter what happens in the market. Or we can wait 3 months, see how things develop, and then renegotiate when rates have probably climbed. Your choice entirely. It's up to you. You've removed all the pressure. You've removed the feeling of being forced. You've handed them the crown of decision-making. Their pride is soothed. Their sense of autonomy is intact. They feel like they're choosing, and they'll choose the path of least resistance because that's where you paved it. You're not the dictator in this scenario. You're not the authority figure. You're the architect of the landscape. You're the person who designed which roads exist and where they lead. They walk where they choose, but you built the roads. They feel free. You have control. Here's another example. Your partner wants to spend the weekend at their mother's house. You don't want to go. The weak move is to say, I don't want to go. Then you get into a debate about whose needs matter more. It becomes a power struggle. Instead, try this. You could go to your mother's place, or we could finally take that trip we've been talking about. Both sound good, but I know which one would make your mom happier. Which feels right to you. You've given them two choices. Both choices involve spending time with family. One involves their mother, one involves your shared experience. They get to choose. They feel empowered, and you've subtly guided them toward the option that works better for you. This law works because it respects the ego's deepest need, the need to believe it's in control. And when the ego gets what it needs, the person becomes flexible. They become willing. They become cooperative. Law 2, the power of denial. Tell someone they can't have something, and you've just made it irresistible. This isn't theory. This is how your brain is wired. It's called reactance theory in psychology. The moment your freedom feels threatened, you experience a primal, visceral urge to reclaim it. It's the same instinct that makes you want something more when you find out it's forbidden. Scarcity is the strongest magnet on Earth, and denial creates scarcity. Don't sell your idea to someone. Forbid it. Frame it as too advanced, too risky, too exclusive, too intense for most people. Tell them this isn't for everyone. A lot of people won't understand it. A lot of people will probably find it disturbing or too complex. Watch what happens in their mind. Their curiosity spikes. Their ego screams, I need to understand this. I need to prove I'm smart enough. Their hunger for you just multiplied. Here's how this works in relationships. Don't make yourself available. Create friction. Create distance. A reason to chase. The person who is easy to get is boring. They're common. Common things are treated with indifference. But the person who is hard to reach, that person is valuable. Think about it this way. If someone immediately agrees to everything you say, you lose respect for them. They become predictable. They become disposable. But if someone questions you, disagrees with you, maintains their own position, suddenly they're interesting. You have to work to convince them. You have to earn their respect. So when you're in a dating scenario, don't immediately say yes to every invitation. Sometimes be unavailable. Sometimes say, I'm not sure if we're the right fit. You're probably better off with someone less complicated, someone less intense. Now watch what happens. They shift from evaluating you to proving they're worthy of you. They shift from thinking about whether they like you to thinking about whether you like them. You flip the entire dynamic on its head. You're no longer the seller desperate for attention. You're no longer the person chasing validation. You're the prize, and they need to qualify for you. By disqualifying them, you force them to chase your validation. By saying no, you made yourself irresistible. By creating scarcity, you created desire. In business, this shows up as the consultant who isn't taking new clients. I'm actually not looking to expand my roster right now. I'm pretty selective about who I work with. Suddenly, the client wants you more than you want them. They're offering better terms. They're offering more money. They're trying to convince you why they're worth your time. The person who is eager to make the sale is weak. The person who is willing to walk away is powerful, because walking away signals that you have options, and options are power. Law 3, the strategic surrender. Most people argue to win. They dig in. They defend their position. They list all the reasons they're right and the other person is wrong. They escalate. They fight. And the other person fights back even harder. It's physics. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. If you push, they push. If you argue, they argue harder. The entire dynamic becomes a power struggle. The strategist doesn't argue to win. The strategist argues to lose on purpose. When you meet resistance, when you encounter a stubborn, aggressive opponent, the worst thing you can do is push back. Pushing back only solidifies their stance. It makes them dig deeper. It makes them more committed to their position. So stop pushing. Instead, pull. Agree with the opposition. Amplify their argument to its logical extreme until it becomes absurd. Take their point and accept it completely. Don't defend. Don't explain. Don't fight back. Someone says your plan is risky. Instead of defending it, you say you're right. My plan is risky. We probably shouldn't do this at all. Actually, maybe we should just maintain the status quo and change nothing. We could keep doing exactly what we're doing and accept whatever happens. You've taken their objection and amplified it to the point of absurdity. Watch their face when you do this. They're braced for impact. They're ready for a fight. They're ready to defend their position against your counterargument. When you surrender, they lose their footing. They fall forward. The opponent suddenly realizes they're arguing against their own caution, and they don't like how it feels. Well, I didn't mean we should do absolutely nothing. Maybe we need to find a middle ground. Maybe we should try a pilot version. By removing the resistance, you created a vacuum. And human nature abhors a vacuum. They'll fill it by arguing your position for you. You win without ever having to fight. This works because most people are prepared for conflict. They have their defenses up. They're ready to battle, but they're not prepared for surrender. They don't know how to respond when their opponent agrees with them. Their brain gets confused. They lose the narrative they were constructing. Here's another scenario. Someone criticizes your work. Instead of defending it, you say you're absolutely right. This section is weak. I could have gone deeper. I should have spent more time on the research. You've agreed with their criticism completely. Now, they have to respond. And often, they'll start defending your work. Well, the overall structure was solid. There were some good points in there. You flipped the conversation. You've made them a defender while you stayed calm and objective. In negotiation, when someone demands a lower price, instead of defending your price, you say you understand. That's fair. Our price is probably higher than what you want to pay. We might not be the right fit for your budget. By accepting their frame, you put the burden on them. Now they have to decide if they want to make an exception. Now, they have to find a way to make it work. Because when you surrender, they become the one fighting to keep you. Law 4. Silence as a weapon. We live in a world of constant broadcasting. Everyone is explaining. Everyone is defending. Everyone is oversharing. Everyone is trying to prove their worth through noise. Silence has become the rarest commodity on earth. And because it's rare, it's terrifying. Every single word you speak depletes your power. It gives others data to analyze, data to critique, data to dismantle. It gives them ammunition. The person who speaks least controls the narrative the most. The person who is mysterious commands the most respect. Think about the people you respect most in your life. Are they the ones who talk the most? Are they the ones who explain everything about themselves? Or are they the people who say less, reveal less, and somehow seem more intelligent because of it? There's a reason silence creates authority. Here's how silence works as a weapon. You ask someone a question. They give you a partial truth. They give you a sanitized version. They hold something back. Most people would fill the silence. They'd say something to soften the awkwardness. They'd ask another question. They'd move the conversation along. But the strategist does something different. The strategist doesn't fill the silence. The strategist lets it sit. They lock eyes with the person. They wait, and they wait, and they wait. What happens in that silence is psychological torture for the other person. The human brain abhors a vacuum. It panics in quiet. It assumes the silence means you know something they don't. It assumes you're judging. It assumes you're calculating. It assumes you're disappointed or angry or suspicious. To relieve that pressure, the other person will talk. They'll confess. They'll reveal what they were holding back. They'll bid against themselves. They'll offer concessions they never intended to make. All because you had the discipline to say nothing. In a sales conversation, after you present your offer, you say the price, and then you stop talking. You don't fill the silence with justifications or explanations or reasons why it's worth it. You let them sit with a number. They feel the pressure. They either accept or they negotiate. But if you keep talking, you weaken your position. You sound desperate. You sound like you're trying to convince them. Silence sounds like confidence. In a relationship, if your partner brings up something you did that upset them, most people immediately defend. They explain. They justify. They try to convince their partner that it wasn't that bad. Instead, listen. Let them speak. Don't interrupt. When they finish, don't immediately respond. Let the silence hang. It signals that you're taking it seriously. It signals that you're reflecting. It signals that their words mattered enough that you need time to think about them. Without saying a word, you've shown respect and thoughtfulness. In negotiation, after the other person makes an offer, you pause. You don't say yes immediately. You don't say no immediately. You sit with it. You let them wonder if you're going to accept. You let them panic slightly. That panic often leads them to sweeten their offer before you've even responded. Silence is heavy. Silence is powerful. Silence is the weapon that separates the amateurs from the professionals. Learn to let it hang in the room. Learn to tolerate the discomfort. Because most people can't. Most people will cave. Most people will talk just to break the tension. And their talking is your advantage. Law 5, the mirror effect. Everyone is the protagonist of their own story. You're not the main character in their movie. They are. Everyone is walking around inside their own head, living in their own narrative, playing the lead role. Everyone is looking for themselves reflected back. You're not looking at them. They're looking for themselves in you. And if you can become the mirror that shows them their best angle, their ideal self, they will become addicted to you. Your logic won't convince them. Your intelligence won't impress them. But their own values, their own vision of who they could be, their own fantasy of their ideal self, that will control them completely. Mirror their ideal self, not their actual self, the version they wish they were, the person they want to believe they are. Noble, intelligent, dangerous, kind, capable, brilliant. When you treat someone as if they're already that person, they become addicted to the reflection you're showing them. You do this through labeling and framing. You say, I know you're the kind of person who values integrity above everything else. I know you're too sharp to fall for easy shortcuts. I know you're someone who takes risks that scare normal people. By giving them a positive trait, by naming who you believe they are, you trap them in the best way. Now, they have to live up to the label. They can't contradict you without contradicting their own self-image. If you tell someone they're too fair-minded to let a small detail ruin a partnership, they'll concede the detail to prove they are fair. If you tell someone they're too intelligent to believe the surface-level explanation, they'll dive deeper to prove they're sharp. If you tell someone they're too courageous to play it safe, they'll take the risk to prove they're brave. You've boxed them in with their own vanity. They're now performing a character that you cast them in. In business, this sounds like, I know you're someone who thinks long-term. I know you understand that the cheapest option isn't always the best option. I know you're willing to invest in quality because you care about results, not just price tags. Now, they have to prove they're that person. They can't negotiate too hard without undermining the image you've created of them. In dating, this works like, I know you're different from most people. I know you actually have depth. I know you're someone who takes relationships seriously instead of playing games. Suddenly, they're locked in. They have to prove they're the deep, serious, special person you described. They can't be shallow or casual without contradicting who you believe they are. The mirror effect is so powerful because it's not insulting. It's not manipulative in an obvious way. It feels like genuine recognition. It feels like you actually see who they are. And people are starting to be seen. People are desperate to have their best self reflected back to them. Give them that, and they'll follow you anywhere. Law 6, the challenge to competence. The deepest wound to the human ego is the question of competence. It's the only threat that truly matters. Men will forgive insults about their appearance. They'll tolerate criticism about their lifestyle, but question whether they're capable, whether they're smart enough, whether they can handle something, and you've triggered the deepest insecurity. So when you want someone to do something, when you want them to take on a burden or a responsibility or a risk, don't beg. Don't offer them rewards. Don't appeal to their sense of duty. Challenge their ability. Imply that maybe they're not ready. Maybe it's beyond their current capacity. This project is urgent and it's complex. Honestly, it might be too much for your current bandwidth. I might need to bring in an external team. I was thinking about bringing in outside consultants. Watch what happens. The ego perceives a threat to its status. It interprets this as a challenge to its competence. It needs to prove you wrong. It needs to prove that it can absolutely handle this. It needs to protect its sense of superiority. So they'll take on the work. They'll take on the risk. They'll take on the burden. All because their ego is screaming that they need to prove you underestimated them. But you have to thread the needle carefully here. There's a balance. Too aggressive, and it feels like an insult. You'll activate their defense mechanisms instead of their ambition. Too subtle, and it doesn't land as a real threat. It just sounds like concern. A concern sounds like protection. Protection triggers a different response entirely. The sweet spot is concern. You're protecting them from failure. You're worried they might overcommit. You're concerned they might take on too much and burn out. Nothing triggers the fighter instinct like being protected from something you believe you can absolutely dominate. They feel patronized. They feel underestimated. They need to prove you wrong. I'd love to bring you in on this, but I'm genuinely worried it might be more than you can handle right now. No, I can do it. Give me the project. I'll crush it. You just triggered their need to prove themselves. In leadership, this is how you delegate upward. You tell your boss, this opportunity came up, but it's probably too risky for our division right now. It might be better to wait until we're more established. You're implying they're not ready. Now they want to prove they are. Now they want to take the risk because they need to prove they're capable. In sales, this sounds like, this solution is probably too advanced for most companies your size, but you seem like you might understand strategy. You've challenged their status. Now they want to prove they're not like most companies. Now they want to show they're sophisticated enough to understand. The challenge to competence is so effective because it bypasses all the rational objections. It bypasses the logical brain. It goes straight to the ego, and the ego will override rationality every single time when it feels threatened. Law 7, the paradox of freedom. People claim they want total freedom. They say they want to be unrestricted. They want complete autonomy. They want no rules. They want nobody telling them what to do. But they're lying. Not intentionally, but they're lying about what they actually want. Total freedom is paralyzing. It's the abyss. When you give someone unlimited choices, their brain shuts down. They don't feel liberated. They feel anxious. They feel lost. They feel the weight of infinite possibility and they freeze. When you tell someone go do whatever you want, I don't care, you're not liberating them. You're terrifying them. You're creating anxiety. You're removing the structure that they needed. In relationships, the partner who demands constant updates is the weak one. Where are you? Who are you with? When are you coming home? What are you doing? That partner is insecure. That partner is afraid of losing their partner. The partner who says go have fun, do whatever feels right, I'm not worried. That's the one holding all the power. Why? Because by granting complete permission, you've removed the thrill of rebellion. If nothing is forbidden, nothing is exciting. There's no rush in doing something secret if the other person doesn't care. There's no satisfaction in breaking a rule if there are no rules. The forbidden makes things valuable. Furthermore, your indifference signals something far more dangerous than jealousy. It signals that you're not afraid to lose them. It signals that you have options. It signals that you're secure. It signals that you're the prize. They're not thinking about the freedom you offered. They're thinking about why you offer it so easily. They're thinking about what you're not saying. They're thinking about whether you actually care. So they'll stay close to you, not because of the leash you gave them, not because of restrictions, but because they're terrified of drifting too far from your indifference. They want to be close enough to matter to you. They want to crack your cool exterior. They want to make you jealous or insecure so that you'll prove you care. In business, the employee who is micromanaged quits. The employee who is given complete freedom stays. Why? Because being given freedom feels like trust. It feels like you believe in them, and they don't want to disappoint someone who believes in them. Meanwhile, the micromanaged employee resents the lack of autonomy and leaves at the first opportunity. The paradox is that the way to control someone is to give them the illusion that there are no controls. The way to keep someone is to act like you don't need them. The way to make someone care is to act like you don't care. Law 8, the strategic flaw. When you appear flawless, when you appear sharp and aggressive and threatening and perfect, people put their guards up immediately. They compete with you. They try to tear you down. They feel threatened by your competence, so they attack it. But when you appear slightly flawed, slightly confused, slightly vulnerable, or in need of help, something shifts in the dynamic. Their defenses lower. Their ego swells. Their protective instinct activates. They want to help you. They want to correct you. They want to teach you. They want to show off their intelligence and their knowledge and their capabilities. This is weaponized weakness. You're not actually weak. You're strategically appearing weak in a specific area so that the other person can feel powerful by helping you. In a meeting, instead of presenting yourself as the expert with all the answers, you say, "I'm honestly not sure how this works. Could you walk me through your strategy again? I want to make sure I understand it correctly." The other person feels smart. They feel needed. They lower their defenses. They open up. They explain their thinking. And in their eagerness to display their knowledge, they reveal their hand. They give you information they never intended to share. They underestimate you. They think you're naive or slow or not as sharp as them. And there is no greater advantage in war than being underestimated. Let them believe they're the hunter and you're the prey. By the time they realize who is actually hunting, their throat is already exposed. This works with authority figures too. You go to your boss and you say, "I've been thinking about this problem all week and I'm not getting anywhere. Do you have any thoughts? I'm kind of stuck." Suddenly, your boss becomes invested in helping you solve the problem. Your boss is the expert now. Your boss feels useful. Your boss is more likely to support whatever solution you eventually find because your boss helped guide you to it. The key is that this flaw has to be real or plausible. It has to be something that they would actually believe. If you pretend to be confused about something obviously simple, it triggers skepticism. But if you pretend to be confused about something complex, it feels authentic. Appearing vulnerable in one area actually makes you appear stronger in others. If you admit you don't know something, people believe you more when you claim to know something else. If you ask for help in one domain, people take your competence in other domains more seriously. The strategic flaw is so effective because it activates the other person's ego in a positive way. Instead of making them defensive, it makes them generous. Instead of making them competitive, it makes them collaborative. They become your ally because they feel they have something to teach you. Law 9, weaponized pessimism. We're drowning in toxic positivity. You can do it. Believe in yourself. Think positive. Visualize success. It's noise. It's worthless. It's actually demotivating because it's dishonest. It gaslights people about the actual difficulty of what they're facing. Sometimes the best motivation comes from brutal honesty about the difficulty and the pain ahead. Sometimes the best way to inspire someone is to agree with their doubt, to validate their fear, to acknowledge that what they want to do is actually hard. When someone says, "I don't think I can do this," most people say, "Yes, you can. You're stronger than you think. You've overcome obstacles before. You can do anything you set your mind to." It's inspirational sounding bullshit. The person doesn't believe it. They can feel the hollowness. They can feel that you're not being honest. Instead, say this: "You're right. It's going to be incredibly hard. Most people won't make it. The pain will be real. It might not be worth what you'll have to sacrifice." You're validating their fear. You're not gaslighting them with false hope. You're the only one being honest with them. And that honesty creates instant credibility. It creates instant rapport. Then something shifts. By painting the challenge as actually difficult, almost impossible, you make the eventual success meaningful. If something is easy, failure is shameful. Failure means you're weak or lazy or incompetent. If something is nearly impossible, failure is expected. Failure is normal. Most people fail, but success becomes heroic. People don't actually want easy wins. They want to slay dragons. They want to overcome something that seemed insurmountable. They want to prove they're capable of more than they thought. So stop handing people safety scissors and telling them they're warriors. Point at the actual mountain. Tell them the probability of reaching the summit is low. Tell them a lot of people will quit halfway. Tell them they'll face moments where they want to give up, and then watch them start climbing. Watch them become determined. Watch them commit to something they were only half interested in before. In coaching, this is the difference between a motivational speaker and an actual coach. The motivational speaker tells you that you can do anything. The actual coach tells you what it will take, what the real obstacles are, and that the journey will be harder than you imagine. And somehow that makes you more willing to do it. In parenting, instead of telling your kid that the test will be easy, you say the test is going to be really hard. There are concepts you might not understand the first time. You might get some questions wrong. That's okay. That's part of the learning. Now your kid is prepared for struggle. Your kid isn't devastated when they encounter difficulty. Your kid expects it. Your kid pushes through it. Weaponized pessimism works because it respects the person's intelligence. It doesn't condescend to them with false hope. It tells them the truth. And people respond to truth. People respond to someone who believes in them enough to be honest with them, instead of feeding them comforting lies. Law 10, the planted seed. The most powerful idea is the one that the other person thinks they invented. If you tell someone what to do, it's a command. It's someone else's idea. If you lead someone to the conclusion and let them say it themselves, it becomes a revelation. It becomes their discovery, and they'll fight to defend it. This requires patience. This requires strategic restraint. You can't just blur out the idea and expect credit. The credit is the price you pay for the control. Here's how it works. You drop hints. You ask leading questions. You highlight a problem, but offer no solution. You let the silence sit. You wait for their brain to connect the dots that you carefully placed. It's interesting how our competitors are cutting costs in ways we haven't. I wonder what they're seeing that we're missing. That's it. You stop talking. You leave it there. It plants a seed. Now, their brain is working on the problem. You frame the problem without giving them the answer. A week later, your boss comes to you excited. I've been thinking, we need to restructure our budget to stay competitive. Maybe we should look at where we're overspending. They've arrived at the conclusion. They think they figured it out, and they're now the champion of the idea. You smile. You agree. You praise their foresight. You say, I think you're onto something. That's a smart insight. You don't say, I told you so. You don't say, I mentioned that last week. You don't claim credit. The credit is the price you pay for the control. They were the crown as long as you're whispering the decrees. In a marriage, if you want your partner to spend more time at the gym, you don't say you need to exercise more. Instead, you say, I notice your work clothes are feeling a little tight. Or I read that most people gain weight around this age unless they stay active. You leave it there. Their brain processes it. They realize they want to change. They decide to start working out. And they own the decision. In sales, you don't tell the client what they need. You ask questions. What are your current pain points? How is this affecting your business? What would happen if this problem got worse? The client answers their own questions. The client realizes they have a problem. The client comes to the conclusion that they need a solution. And now they're ready to buy your solution because they discovered the problem themselves. This law is so powerful because ownership changes everything. When someone owns an idea, they defend it. When someone owns a decision, they commit to it. But when someone is told what to think, they resist. The human brain rejects external commands and embraces internal discoveries. The planted seed requires you to be patient. It requires you to not need the immediate credit. It requires you to be comfortable with someone else getting the glory. But the power you gain is far greater than any immediate recognition could give you. Law 11. The contrast principle. The human brain cannot evaluate anything in isolation. You only know if something is expensive by comparing it to something else. You only know if something is heavy by comparing it to something light. You only know if something is reasonable by comparing it to something unreasonable. This is how you engineer decisions. This is how you make your actual ask seem reasonable by making the previous ask seem absurd. Before you ask for what you actually want, you ask for something much larger and completely unreasonable. You anchor the negotiation in the extreme. You define the battlefield so that the middle ground, where you actually wanted to be all along, looks like a sanctuary. I need you to stay late every single night this week to finish this project. We're talking Monday through Friday, late every night. The immediate response is no way. Impossible. I can't do that. I have a family. I have commitments. This is unreasonable. You pause. You accept the rejection. Okay, I understand. This is a lot to ask. Can you at least give me 2 hours tonight? Just tonight. 2 hours, so we don't fall too far behind. Okay, I could do 2 hours tonight. If you had asked for 2 hours from the start, they might have hesitated. They might have negotiated. But compared to every night for a week, 2 hours feels like relief. It feels like a concession you made. It feels like they won the negotiation. They feel like they compromised reasonably. They feel good about saying yes. In salary negotiation, you ask for 50% more than you're willing to accept. The employer says absolutely not. That's way above our budget. You come back with 30% more. Now 30% seems reasonable compared to 50%. The employer feels like they negotiated you down. The employer feels like they got a win. You end up with significantly more than you would have gotten if you asked for 30% initially. In business, if you're trying to get someone to commit to a 6-month project, you first propose a 2-year commitment. The immediate reaction is no, that's too long. You then propose 9 months. 9 months seems reasonable compared to 2 years. The client agrees to 9 months. But if you had proposed 9 months initially, they might have countered with 6 months. The contrast principle works because it's not a trick. It's how human perception actually works. Our brains are comparison machines. We evaluate relative to anchors. When you set the anchor high, everything else feels lower. When you set the anchor unreasonable, everything else feels reasonable. The key is that the initial ask has to be credible enough that they take it seriously. If you ask for something so absurd that they laugh, it breaks the frame. But if you ask for something that's just at the edge of possibility, they'll engage with it seriously. They'll reject it seriously. And then your actual ask will feel like a reasonable compromise. Law 12. Controlled incompetence. If you do something too well, you'll be punished with more of it. Fix the printer once, and you're the IT guy forever. Everyone comes to you with their technical problems. You become the person who solves printing issues. Be the responsible one in a relationship, and you'll carry the mental load forever. You'll organize everything. You'll remember everything. You'll manage everyone else's life because you're good at it. Sometimes the most strategic move is to fail deliberately, to be clumsy, to forget, to do the task so poorly that you're never asked to do it again. This is weaponized incompetence. It forces others to step up. It forces others to take responsibility. It protects your time. It filters out the tasks that don't serve your ultimate purpose. You don't want to be the one who organizes all the family events. So you organize one family event, but you mess up. You book the wrong restaurant. You get the date wrong. You forget to invite important people. It's a disaster. Now nobody asks you to organize events anymore. They've learned that you're not the person for that job, and you've successfully gotten out of an obligation without saying no. In work, if you do administrative tasks too well, people will ask you to do more administrative work instead of promoting you to meaningful projects. So you do the administrative work poorly. You miss deadlines. You lose documents. You make small mistakes. Now people stop asking you to do those tasks. Now you're available for higher value work. Do not be the hero who catches every falling plate. Let a few smash. The sound of breaking glass is often the only thing that wakes people up to your value. The sound of failure is what teaches them to step up. But here's the key. This has to be done tactically. You can't just refuse to do something or do it with obvious resentment. That creates conflict. You have to genuinely try and just fall short. You have to appear incompetent, not unwilling. You have to seem like you're not the right person for the job, not that you don't care. If your boss asks you to handle social media and you don't want that responsibility, you do take the job. But your posts are boring. Your engagement is low. Your follower growth is stagnant. After a few months, your boss realizes that social media isn't your strength. Your boss finds someone else. You're out of the obligation. If your partner expects you to always know what to eat for dinner, you suggest things that are actively bad. You overcook things. You choose restaurants that turn out to be closed. Eventually, your partner stops asking. Your partner takes over planning meals. And you've removed yourself from an obligation without conflict. Controlled incompetence is so effective because it doesn't create resistance. You're not saying no. You're not arguing. You're not creating conflict. You're simply showing that you're not the right person for the job. And people respond to that. People respect that more than refusing. Law 13, the withdrawal. We value what we might lose. You can be charming. You can be skilled. You can be brilliant. You can be beautiful. You can be intelligent. You can have all the qualities that should make someone want to be around you. But if you're always available, you are worth nothing. The economic law of supply and demand applies to the human soul. Scarcity creates value. Abundance creates indifference. The person who is always there is taken for granted. The person who is sometimes unavailable is treasured. When you feel taken for granted, when you feel like your presence isn't appreciated, the most powerful response is not to complain or argue. The most powerful response is to disappear. Hold back your energy. Take longer to respond to messages. Be less enthusiastic. Cancel a plan. Create a void where your validation and attention used to be. This triggers a primal panic in the other person. Have I lost them? What changed? Why are they pulling away? They start to realize how much space you occupied in their life. They realize there's a hole where you used to be, and that hole is painful. So they chase. They try to win you back. They overcompensate. They offer more attention. They increase their investment. But this must be done without anger. This is critical. If you withdraw with anger, it's a tantrum. It's reactive. It's weak. If you withdraw with indifference, it's power. It's intentional. It signals that you are perfectly fine without them. And that's the only signal that commands actual respect. Angry withdrawal sounds like, you obviously don't care about me, so I'm done. Cold withdrawal sounds like, I've just been really focused on my own stuff lately. I'm genuinely happy and busy. I'm not available this weekend, but I hope you're doing well. In a relationship, when your partner takes you for granted, when they stop making an effort, you don't get angry and yell about it. You become unavailable. You spend more time with your friends. You pick up a hobby. You focus on yourself. You respond to their texts slower. You're less excited to see them. You stop trying to please them. And suddenly, they feel the withdrawal. Suddenly, they realize they might lose you. Suddenly, they start trying. In business, when a client stops valuing you, when they're nickel-and-diming you on every proposal, the best move isn't to fight harder or prove your worth. The best move is to pull back. You're less responsive. You take longer on proposals. You're less eager to take their projects. And suddenly, the client realizes that you have options. The client realizes that you're not desperate to work with them. The client suddenly becomes more generous. The withdrawal works because it triggers the fear of loss. Loss aversion is stronger than gain motivation. People work harder to avoid losing something than they work to gain something new. So by creating the threat of loss, you trigger their motivation to keep you. But it has to feel genuine. It can't feel like a manipulation. It has to feel like you genuinely have moved on. You genuinely have other priorities. You genuinely are okay without them. That's what makes it powerful. That's what makes people chase. And here's the deepest truth about withdrawal. It only works if it's true. If you're faking it, if you're secretly desperate, if you're hoping they'll come back and chase you, it doesn't work. They feel the need underneath the act. They smell the desperation. The withdrawal becomes a manipulation instead of a power move. So the withdrawal only works as a genuine expression of your actual disengagement. You have to actually mean it. You have to actually be willing to let them go. That's when it becomes magnetic. Now pause. Stop. Before you start thinking about how you're going to use these 13 laws on your boss, your partner, your competition, your family, pause. Before you start imagining the strings you'll pull, the strategies you'll deploy, the way you'll manipulate people into giving you what you want, pause. You're already thinking about it, aren't you? You're already playing out scenarios. You're already planning which law to use in which situation. You're already feeling the rush of power that comes from understanding these rules. But you're missing the entire point. You're missing the master key that makes all of this actually work. Ask yourself this. Why do you feel the need to control them? Why do you feel the need to manage their perception? Why do you feel the need to engineer their decisions? Dig deeper. What are you actually afraid of? Because the need to manipulate comes from fear. It comes from the fear of abandonment. It comes from the fear of irrelevance. It comes from the fear of a chaotic, unpredictable world where you can't guarantee outcomes. You want to use reverse psychology as a shield. You want these laws to be a way to guarantee that people will give you what you want. You want certainty in a world that offers no certainty. But here's the paradox that destroys most people who learn these principles. Here's the thing that makes them worthless if you don't understand it. You can only wield these laws effectively if you don't need them. Think about it. Really think about it. The person who is truly detached, truly secure, truly doesn't care if they get the deal or the relationship or the approval. That person naturally applies all 13 of these laws without even trying. They're scarce because they have a full life. They're mysterious because they don't need to overshare for validation. They let others choose because they're not afraid of the choice. They withdraw when they lose interest because they have other things that matter to them. They speak little because they don't need to prove themselves through words. The technique is just an imitation of a mindset. If you use these laws as a desperate trick to force someone to love you or respect you or choose you, they will smell it. Neediness has a stench that doesn't wash off. It's invisible to you, but obvious to everyone else. The mask will slip. You can't fake detachment for long. The effort will show. The desperation will leak through. So the ultimate reverse psychology, the master key, is applied to yourself. You must convince yourself that you don't need the outcome. You must build a life so rich, a mind so fortified, a sense of purpose so clear that rejection from others is simply data. It's information. It's not a wound. It doesn't mean anything about your value. When you stop needing the world to applaud you, the world starts chasing you. When you stop needing approval, you become magnetic. When you stop trying to convince people, they become convinced. When you stop trying to make them choose you, they choose you. When you stop trying to make them love you, they love you. This is not spiritual bypassing. This is not fake it till you make it. This is actual internal work. This is building your life in such a way that your neediness naturally decreases. You read more books. You develop skills. You work out. You create things. You build friendships. You pursue meaning. You chase excellence instead of attention. And as you do this, the laws stop being tactics. They become your natural way of being. They stop being things you do. They become things you are. The assignment. So here's your task. Don't try to use all 13 at once. If you try to implement all of these tomorrow, you'll look like a psychopath. You'll look calculated and fake, and everyone will feel it. Pick one. Pick the law that scares you most. Maybe it's silence. Maybe it makes you anxious to not feel the awkwardness. Maybe it's withdrawal. Maybe you're afraid that if you pull back, people will leave and never come back. Maybe it's the illusion of choice. Maybe you're used to just telling people what to do, and the idea of giving them options feels like you're losing control. Pick the one that triggers something in you. Pick the one that feels most counterintuitive. That's the one you need to practice. Try just once this week. One real situation. Watch the reaction. Watch how the dynamic shifts. Watch how the energy in the room moves from them to you. Watch what changes when you apply just one principle. In that moment, when you see the shift, you'll realize something. You'll realize that you've been playing the game with one hand tied behind your back. You've been playing by rules that nobody enforces. You've been following constraints that don't actually exist. You've been weak not because you're incapable, but because you've accepted a narrative about how things are supposed to work. And that realization is the beginning of everything. You are not late to this knowledge. You're exactly in time. The world is a chessboard. Most people are pawns moving blindly, reacting to the square in front of them. They never look up. They never see the bigger picture. They never realize that the hand moving the pieces is a human hand. They never realize that they could be the hand instead of the pawn. It's time you started playing like the hand that moves the pieces. The people who run the world, the people who have influence and respect and power, they understand these principles. Maybe they learned them consciously. Maybe they discovered them through experience. But they understand how human psychology actually works, and they use that understanding to shape outcomes. You now understand these principles. You have the blueprint. You have the map. But understanding and applying are different things. Understanding is the first step, but the real work happens when you take these concepts and weave them into how you think, how you speak, how you act. If you're ready to stop being a spectator in your own life, if you're ready to stop settling for less than what you're capable of achieving, if you're ready to learn the language of power that is spoken in the shadows, in the boardrooms, in the bedrooms where real decisions get made, then you know what comes next. We teach you how to transcend. We don't teach you how to fit in. We teach you how to dominate. We teach you how to move from being a pawn to being the hand that moves the pieces. The world has been waiting for you to wake up, but you can't stay asleep forever. Sooner or later, you have to choose. You can go back to playing by the old rules. You can go back to being readable and available and transparent and weak. Or you can see the game for what it is. You can understand the actual rules. You can become the person who runs the room instead of the person who reacts to it. The choice is yours. But know this, the moment you really understand these principles, you can't unsee them. You can't go back to innocence. You can't pretend that the game is played by the rules you were taught. The world is a chessboard, and the pieces are already moving. The question is, are you going to be the hand that moves them, or are you going to keep waiting for someone else's hand to move you around? I'll see you in the next one. Don't let them see you coming.